Thibodaux Parish, Louisiana, a land of rich soil and quiet, shadowed corners deep in Cajun country. Here, a large-scale hog farm sat isolated from the residential areas. To get to it, you had to drive past vast lotus fields, then turn onto a narrow red clay road, muddy in the rainy season and choked with dust in the dry. The farm was nestled amidst fruit orchards and a labyrinth of bayous, almost completely cut off from the outside world. The owner of this farm was a man in his 50s named Jedediah Morrow, but the locals usually called him by a more familiar name, Jed. Jed Morrow's hog farm was famous, not just for its thousands of fattening pigs, but also for a rather strange hiring practice. He exclusively hired widowed women in difficult circumstances from other states to do manual labor like mixing feed and cleaning the pens. On an early morning in May 2022, at a small roadside diner at the crossroads leading to the farm, a few middle-aged women were resting their feet after an early trip to the market. Their conversation buzzed from the price of rice to the weather, to their children's schooling. Then, the topic gradually shifted to the familiar local gossip. Martha, a woman with a booming voice, said that old Jed Morrow's farm was doing mighty fine business lately, and mentioned that she had seen him bringing in a whole new truckload of piglets the day before. Brenda, sitting beside her, pursed her lips. She agreed about the fine business, but said there was something creepy about the place. It was always so quiet, with the gates locked up tight. He did not socialize with anybody. Martha defended him, saying he was as harmless as a fly, a good, church-going man who was always helping out poor widows. Hearing this, Susan, who had been quietly fanning herself, suddenly lowered her voice and glanced around. She whispered that she did not know about him being harmless and found it strange. She then asked if anyone had seen the young woman, Maria, from Texas, who had started working for him a few months back. Brenda chimed in that now that she mentioned it, Maria used to come out to buy little things from her all the time, but she had not seen hide nor hair of her for a month now. Brenda clicked her tongue. She figured Maria had probably just up and left, like the others. She noted that nobody who worked for him ever stayed long. They were there for a few months, then they were gone. He would say they found a better job or ran off with some man to another state. But the strange thing was that not a single one of them ever came back to visit or even called their old friends there. The rumors, the stories without beginning or end, swirled around the pungent-smelling farm like a morning fog before burning off. People were curious, but then they were pulled back into the vortex of their own daily struggles. No one truly paid attention to the fates of those strange women from out of town. They were just faint shadows who came and went from the lives of the local folk. But far away, in a small house in Texas, there was one person who could not stop paying attention: Elena Flores, the mother of Maria Flores. For more than 3 months, she had lived in a state of gnawing anxiety. Her daughter, Maria, 30, had been struggling to raise 2 young children alone after her husband passed away. Nearly a year ago, she heard through the grapevine that a man named Jed Morrow in Louisiana was hiring, room and board included, with good pay. So she had tearfully left her 2 children in her mother's care and went to work there, hoping to send some money back home. At first, Maria called home every week. Her voice on the phone was always cheerful. She said the boss was very kind, and though the work was hard and smelly, the income was stable. Every month, she scrimped and saved to send money back for her children. But then the calls grew less frequent, from once a week to every 2 weeks, then once a month. And for the last 3 months, there had been nothing but silence. Elena called her daughter's number, only to hear the endless, hopeless ringing before a message said the subscriber could not be reached. She asked around with others from her town who worked nearby, but no one had any news. An invisible fear began to envelop the old mother. She knew her daughter. Maria was responsible and loved her children fiercely. There was no way she would just leave without a word to her own mother and her 2 babies. Every night, Elena tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Images of her daughter haunted her fitful dreams. Unable to wait any longer, she decided she had to find her daughter herself. She packed a few old clothes, entrusted her 2 grandchildren to a kind neighbor for a few days, and caught the earliest bus to Louisiana. The journey was long and exhausting. When she finally reached Thibodaux Parish, she had to ask for directions and then hire a taxi to take her down the dirt road to Jed's farm. Standing before the rusty iron gate, looking at the large, silent compound with only the squealing of pigs and the overpowering stench, Elena's heart grew even heavier. She called out at the gate for a long time before Jed Morrow emerged from the house. He still had the face of a simple, gentle farmer. When he saw Elena, he acted very surprised and asked if he could help her. Elena said, her voice trembling, that she was the mother of Maria, the young woman who worked there, and that she had come to visit her. Hearing this, Jed's expression changed. He looked guilty and somewhat awkward. He exclaimed, "My lord," and said she came all this way without calling first. He then explained that Maria had quit working there over 3 months ago. Elena was stunned and asked where she went. Jed explained that Maria had told him she had found a good man down in Florida. He had promised her a new life and even offered to help raise her kids. Jed said she was very happy, thanked him profusely, packed her bags, and left. He added that he was happy for her, seeing her find a new start, and had even given her a little extra cash for the bus fare. He just figured she had already told her family. Elena felt her ears ringing. She did not believe it. She could not believe it. Her daughter was not like that. She looked straight into Jed Morrow's eyes, trying to find a lie. But his eyes were calm, his voice sincere. He even invited her in for a glass of water, asking about her health and her 2 grandchildren. His kindness and the reasonableness of his story left Elena, though still full of suspicion, at a loss for words. She left dejectedly, her heart heavy with conflict. A part of her wanted to believe her daughter had found happiness, but another part, a mother's intuition, told her that something terrible had happened behind the iron gates of that farm. Returning to Texas, the unease in Elena's heart did not fade, it grew stronger each day. She decided she could not wait in silence any longer. She had to go to the police. She believed only the police could help her find the truth. Once again, the old mother took the bus to Louisiana. This time, she did not go to Jed's farm but straight to the Thibodaux Parish Sheriff's Office. Sitting in the reception area, she wrote out a report, recounting the entire story of her daughter's disappearance and her suspicions about the hog farm owner, Jedediah Morrow. That report, written with the tears and love of a mother, officially began an investigation that would unmask a monster in human clothing. Upon receiving Elena Flores's report, the Thibodaux Parish Sheriff's Office opened a missing person file for Maria Flores and began the initial verification steps according to procedure. 2 deputies were sent to Jedediah Morrow's farm to speak with him. Facing the police again, Jed remained cooperative and calm. He repeated the exact same story he had told Elena, without a single deviation. He even expressed great sympathy for the old mother's worry and promised to provide any information if needed. The deputies inspected the small room where Maria had stayed. It was empty and had been cleaned out, with no personal belongings left behind. The initial investigation hit a dead end. The case was temporarily classified as a standard missing person case. It was possible Maria had voluntarily left with another man without telling her family, a scenario not uncommon for women in her situation. Time passed. Maria Flores's file gradually gathered dust in a cabinet of cold cases. But Elena Flores's persistence never waned. Every month, she would make the long trip to the sheriff's office, her eyes filled with tears, asking for news. The old mother's determination eventually caught the attention of the higher-ups at the Louisiana State Police. Noticing the unusual aspects of this disappearance, especially the vague but haunting rumors surrounding Jed Morrow's farm, the state police headquarters directed their criminal investigation division to get involved, forming a task force to reinvestigate the case thoroughly. Captain Bo Guidry, a highly experienced investigator, was assigned to lead it. He did not believe in coincidences. He began by ordering his subordinates to pull all of Jed Morrow's employment records, to find out about every woman who had ever worked at that farm in the past 5 years. A quiet but intense investigation began. This was an incredibly difficult task. Jed's hiring practices were haphazard, with almost no formal contracts or clear paperwork, only scraps of paper with names and hometowns scribbled on them. It took the detectives weeks to compile a list of former female employees. And then they began the journey to find those women. Teams were dispatched across the rural South to Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, and Texas following faint trails. They visited the hometown addresses written on the old scraps of paper. They met with the families of each woman, and a terrifying pattern began to emerge. In a poor county in Mississippi, they met the brother of Brenda Jackson, a widow who had gone to work for Jed in 2018. The brother recounted that she went up there to work for about a year and sent money back every month regularly. She said the boss was good and the work was steady. Then, suddenly, there was nothing. They went up there to look for her, and Mr. Morrow said she had run off with some fellow to live in Georgia. They believed him. She was still young, and they hoped she would find another husband to lean on. They had not heard a word since. In Arkansas, the story of Sophia Vargas was similar. Her mother said her daughter lost contact after about 8 months of working at the hog farm. When she called to ask, Jed Morrow said Sophia had gone to Mexico with her deceased husband's family because someone there was gravely ill and needed care. And so it went. 6 women, plus Maria Flores, made 7. All shared the same profile, widowed, from other states, came to work for Jed for a period of a few months to a year, and then all quit to find a new life for various reasons and vanished without a trace. Their families, being far away, trusting the boss's word, or simply being overwhelmed by their own hardships, had never aggressively reported their loved ones missing. 7 women. Same circumstances. Same workplace. Same mysterious disappearance. This could not be a coincidence. In a task force meeting, Captain Guidry placed the photos of the 7 women on a whiteboard. 7 smiles, 7 fates, now all giant question marks. He stated firmly that they were dealing with a serial killer. He believed Jedediah Morrow's farm was not a place of work but a death trap, and it was very likely also a graveyard. But the biggest question remained: where were their bodies? Without a body, charging a cunning man like Jed Morrow would be nearly impossible. He could easily deny everything, claim it was all a coincidence, and that he could not control the private lives of his employees. The task force faced a wall of silence that seemed impenetrable. They decided they had to find objective, undeniable evidence. Captain Guidry had an idea. If these women had really left to start new lives, their financial activities must have left some trace. He directed a team to work with banks to review all accounts registered to the 7 women. After weeks of sifting through data, another pattern was discovered. All 7 bank accounts of the 7 women shared a common feature. They all received monthly salary deposits from a business account named Morrow Hog Farm. And they all ceased activity abruptly. The last transaction on each account was a withdrawal of nearly the entire balance from various ATMs within Louisiana. After that, there were no more transactions of any kind. No deposits, no withdrawals, no transfers. 7 people had seemingly vanished from the financial system. This was extremely valuable evidence, suggesting their disappearances were not voluntary. It reinforced the theory that they had been murdered and robbed of their final savings. With this evidence, the task force had a stronger basis to suspect Jedediah Morrow. Even with evidence of the serial disappearances and the unusual financial patterns, the task force knew that as long as they had no bodies or direct physical evidence, convicting Jedediah Morrow of murder would be incredibly difficult. He could claim he paid them in cash and that it was their business to withdraw all their money to start a new life. Captain Guidry knew that to break this case, they needed a breakthrough from the inside. He decided to execute a bold and risky plan: send in an undercover officer. Deputy Isabella Izzy Rossi, a young, attractive female officer who was also incredibly brave, resourceful, and a skilled actress, was chosen for the mission. A perfect cover story was created for her. Izzy would play the role of Angela, a woman from Alabama, widowed after a traffic accident, struggling to support her elderly mother and young child. She heard about the kindness of the hog farm owner, Mr. Morrow, and came seeking a job. All her identification and a tragic life story were meticulously prepared, leaving no loopholes. Izzy, as Angela, went to Jed's farm. As predicted, upon seeing a young, beautiful woman in a desperate situation, Jed showed great interest. He questioned her thoroughly about her family and her past. Izzy, following the script, told her life story with great emotion, even shedding a few tears. Her apparent vulnerability and pitiful state completely earned the initial trust of the farm owner. She was hired. Izzy's first days on the farm were like hell. The work was grueling, the environment foul, and above all, there was the constant loneliness and sense of unease. She lived in a shabby little room, separate from the male workers, and always felt Jed's prying eyes on her. At first, he acted very kind and concerned, often bringing her food and drinks, asking about her life, and sometimes even giving her extra money. But behind that kindness, Izzy sensed a lethal danger, a predator quietly observing its prey. Izzy's mission was to find any evidence related to the missing victims. Taking advantage of moments when Jed was away or at night, she secretly searched everywhere on the farm, from the warehouse and the feed processing area to Jed's main house. After days of searching with her heart in her throat, she made a horrifying discovery. In an old wooden chest stored in the dusty, cobweb-filled loft of the warehouse, she found dozens of sets of old women's clothing, a few worn-out handbags, and, most importantly, cheap jewelry like silver rings, costume necklaces, and earrings. They were kept like trophies. Izzy secretly photographed all of these items and sent the images back to the task force. When these photos were shown to the families of the 7 missing women, they burst into tears, identifying them as the belongings of their loved ones. This was the first piece of physical evidence confirming that the victims' disappearances were directly linked to Jedediah Morrow. Meanwhile, Izzy continued her mission. She reported back that the most suspicious area on the farm was the feed processing plant. It was a large workshop containing a powerful industrial grinder and enormous cast iron vats used for cooking feed. Jed strictly forbade anyone, even the male workers, from entering this area. He always prepared the feed himself, at night. Many nights, Izzy had heard the grinder roaring and smelled a strange, acrid odor, a pungent, cloying smell not like normal hog feed. Realizing the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous for the undercover officer, and with enough preliminary evidence, Captain Guidry decided they had to act. But he needed scientific proof to legally obtain a search warrant. He directed the financial investigation team to expedite their work. They focused on finding an anomaly in the farm's supply invoices. And finally, they found it. While reviewing invoices from industrial chemical suppliers, they discovered that Jedediah Morrow had, for many years, regularly purchased very large quantities of lysodium hydroxide and sulfuric acid. These are extremely powerful chemicals capable of rapidly corroding and dissolving organic tissue. The quantities Jed purchased far exceeded the normal needs for cleaning a hog farm. The most horrific hypothesis was put forth. Jed was using these chemicals to help dispose of the victims' bodies. With evidence of him possessing the victims' personal effects, combined with the purchase of large quantities of chemicals capable of destroying a human body, the Thibodaux Parish District Attorney's Office approved an emergency warrant to search the entire property of Jedediah Morrow. The net had begun to tighten. Early one morning, while mist still clung to the fields, hundreds of officers from a sheriff's office and state police SWAT teams secretly surrounded Jed Morrow's hog farm. Deputy Rossi, the undercover officer, had received the signal and safely exfiltrated the farm the night before. The order to breach was given. Tactical teams swarmed in from multiple directions. Jedediah Morrow, who was in the feed processing plant at the time, was taken completely by surprise. He attempted to resist but was quickly tackled and subdued by the officers. A comprehensive search began immediately. In the main house, besides the chest containing the victims' belongings, police found another sick collection, dozens of pairs of women's underwear hidden in a metal box under his bed. But the place that made everyone's blood run cold was the feed processing workshop. To the naked eye, it looked normal, apart from the characteristic stench. But when the crime scene unit sprayed luminol and shone a UV light, a horrifying scene was revealed. The entire floor, the walls around the industrial grinder, and the insides of the giant cast iron vats glowed with an eerie blue light. Countless bloodstains, despite having been scrubbed and cleaned meticulously, were still visible. This was not a place for making hog feed. This was a slaughterhouse, a human execution chamber. Blood samples were collected, and subsequent analysis showed DNA from multiple different people, but specific identities could not be determined as the samples were too degraded and mixed with chemicals. But where were the victims' bodies? All eyes now turned to the large, ominous catfish pond behind the main house. Based on the most horrific scenario they could imagine, the task force decided to drain the pond. The task was monumental. The parish had to bring in multiple high-capacity pumps, and even the fire department was called in to assist. After more than 2 days and 1 night of continuous pumping, the pond, hundreds of square yards in size, finally revealed its muddy bottom. And there, in the stinking black sludge, white fragments of human bone began to appear. Forensic anthropologists had to work in incredibly difficult conditions to collect every piece, every shard. They found countless fragments of skulls, ribs, arm bones, and leg bones belonging to at least 7 different individuals. This pond was not just for raising fish, it was a mass grave, the final resting place for the remains of an unforgivable evil. At the sheriff's office, faced with the undeniable evidence, the victim's belongings, the bloodstains in his slaughterhouse, and especially the skeletons found in his own catfish pond, Jedediah Morrow knew that all denial was futile. He bowed his head and confessed. His confession was a horrifying story of a twisted psyche and a pathological hatred of women. He said that after his wife left him, he began to despise all women, believing they were all deceitful and unfaithful. He developed a desire for revenge. He chose to hire widowed women in difficult circumstances because he believed they were vulnerable, easy to manipulate, and that when they disappeared, few would care enough to look for them. He recounted in detail each murder he had committed. His method was to initially act kind and caring to gain their trust. Then he would find a way to rape them. The poor women, alone in a strange place and terrified, initially did not dare to resist. But when someone expressed a desire to leave or threatened to go to the police, he would murder them without hesitation. He admitted that after killing the victims, he brought the bodies to the workshop. There, using the same tools he used for butchering pigs, he dismembered them. The flesh and organs he put through the industrial grinder, minced them up with vegetables, and then cooked the mixture in the giant vats to make feed for his thousands of pigs. As for the bones, after boiling them clean and using chemicals to remove all traces of tissue, he would put them in sacks and throw them into the catfish pond to dispose of the evidence. He believed it was the perfect disposal method, that no one would ever find a single trace. Jedediah Morrow's confession closed one of the most gruesome and shocking cases in Louisiana's criminal history. For the heinous crimes he committed, at the subsequent trial, the jury of Thibodaux Parish sentenced the defendant, Jedediah Morrow, to the highest penalty, death. The sentence was passed. Justice was served for the wrong souls. But this case leaves behind a timeless lesson about vigilance. It shows that evil sometimes is not far away but can hide behind the most ordinary and gentle facades. And it is also a testament to the determination, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit of law enforcement, who worked silently day and night to drag a monster out of the darkness.